Welcome everyone to my journey to Certified Agile Coach with Jason Cathcart. So I've known Jason for quite a few years. He's very much been on the Agile community scene in Sydney for quite a while, and yeah, helps out. He's actually co-organizer of this meetup. Jason's the sort of guy that will rock up earlier than I can get there and set up the chairs and really kind of make everything run smoothly. Yeah, really passionate about a bunch of things. I think the agile coaching and the coaching in general, yeah, definitely comes across with Jason's enthusiasm. Just the logistics tonight, we'll be asking, well, if you've got any questions, just at the end of each topic. So yeah, that's right, Jason, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just got those sort of
and if we run out of time, might park your question and get back to you offline, if that's okay.
Yeah, sweet. But I guess this is an information session more than anything. It's not an interactive workshop, but it's very much meant to be interactive in terms of, yeah, ask questions, sound Jason out about his experience, because, yeah, there's lots of nuances to this that you just won't be able to pick up reading what it says on a Scrum Alliance website or anything like that. Cool. Well, without any further ado, I'd like to, hand it over to Jason. Please welcome Jason.
Thank you very much, everyone. Hopefully you can hear me. I have, as Ron said, I've got a bit of a cough, so I might, if I miss the mute button, my apologies, but I'll try to mute if I need to cough. This is my journey to a Certified Agile Coach. This is what we'll go through today. So the first part is going from a Scrum Master to an Agile Coach, and we'll go through what the difference between the two roles are. And then I'll go through my particular journey, and then any recommendations on learning. And then the kind of meat in this kind of presentation is from Agile Coach to being a Certified Agile Coach. And we'll go through quite a few things. There's quite a few slides in the process part of it as well, because that's where the detail is. I'll make these slides available. There's like a lot of these slides are kind of content heavy. I'm not going to read them out to you. So I'll make them available to you after the presentation as well. So you can, I put links in everything as well. I've been a coach for 5 years, and I've come as a coach from Scrum Mastery, but before then I was a business analyst and a project manager. I've worked for the same company for 18 years. I work for Optus at the moment, but the subsidiary I worked for most of that time was Virgin Mobile. So I worked for Virgin Mobile as a project manager and a business analyst. I just love Scrum, and I've got a Scrum and Agile, Scrum in particular, because it really kind of empowers people to deliver, and they can achieve what they need to achieve. The other reason why I like Scrum and Agile is that it really, for me, fosters a really positive work environment, right? We all got to work, right? But in particular, there's a better culture in Agile as opposed to more traditional ways of working. And that's why I love being involved in Agile and Scrum. So as I said, happy to field questions at the end of each topic. If we don't have time, I'll park your question and get back to you. It's good to have your camera on, but it's not important. If you don't want your camera on, that's fine. I'll share the slides at the end. And biggest point as well is your mileage might vary, right? So although I'll speak through my experience, your experience will most likely be entirely different, right? But I hope you get something from this session, and not only learn from it, but yeah, inspire you to move on, to go on. So 8:10, we're a little bit ahead of time. So from Scrum Master to Agile Coach, right? So how do you make that jump from being a Scrum Master to an Agile Coach? Hopefully we all know what a Scrum Master is. Scrum Master deals with one team, hopefully not two teams, just one team, and you deal with like facilitating the events in that team, coaching people, individual members of the team, the use of Scrum, and day-to-day activities, removing impediments from objectives, but what an Agile Coach is. Now, the thing I like about this definition from Scrum Alliance is that it is a definition. So you'll find as being an Agile Coach that a lot of different companies and organizations have their own kind of view of what an Agile Coach is. And that's kind of, for a long time, a bit gray of what an Agile Coach actually does. And depending on like the organization's implementation of Agile at scale, the coach would be doing different things. If you ask me what an Agile Coach does in SAFe, I have no idea, right? So it's kind of like the Agile Coaches almost at one point it was a catch-all for anything Agile or Scrum related in an organization, especially at Agile at Scale. So but what we do is we coach leadership, leadership coaching to executives, managers. We facilitate larger events, not just in team, we do larger events. We do a lot of training. I actually do quite a lot of training internally with our particular ways of working. And we help teams and the organization make that transformational change into Agile. There's a great report that was out November last year from the Business Agility Institute, and it's Agile Jobs in the Market, and it's by the Business and Scrum Alliance and Business Agility Institute, and it was by this guy called Evan Laybourne. But the point I'd like to say, probably make here, is that being a Scrum Master, it's in high demand, and the market needs more, essentially. So low supply and high demand. So you probably need to question why you want to be a coach, I suppose, is the big thing, right? So there's kind of been a downturn recently, and it says here that demand for Agile is low, 18% of organizations for Agile coach, and even lower for enterprise coaches, right? I have my own view on why this is, but there's kind of a contradiction that's explained in this report, and please read it afterwards. It's an amazing report. It says that there's this kind of, although the skill of coaching is sought after within other roles. So an Agile coach as a role is evolving, and enterprise coach as a role is evolving. And it may be that Agile coach as a skill is still well sought after, and it may fit into other roles. Like you may be, just like what you said, Gordon, at the start, you may be like a product owner with something else. So it's, as a skill, it's still sought after, but the coach as a role is evolving. I'm going to go through my particular journey. 2012, actually way before then, I was a business analyst and a project manager, and I was micromanaged, unfortunately. The team, I got certified in 2013 as a certified Scrum Master, and the reason why there was really weird implementation of Scrum and Agile where I worked, that as a project manager, depending on the platform that you touched or were making changes to, you would act as a Scrum Master for those particular changes. It was really weird. So I got certified in 2013, but then in 2017 there was org change where Virgin Mobile was being shut down, and there was an opportunity for me to be a Scrum Master. So because I had this certified Scrum Master certificate, I was seconded into a Scrum Master role. So that's how I became a Scrum Master. I had the most amazing mentor supplied to me, Dave Martin. If anybody knows Dave Martin in the Agile community in Sydney, he was my mentor he's an Agile coach, but he mentored me as a Scrum Master. And I was a Scrum Master across 2 digital teams. I was the Scrum Master for eShop for Optus, and I started my self-learning journey. I had a baby 2018, but in 2019, there was another org change. Agile was really working at Optus, and we got consultants in. They suggested that you don't need Scrum Masters, which was a bit weird. So I was out of a job, my secondment finished, but we need Agile coaches. So I came to be an Agile coach through another org change. We had quite a number of senior Agile coaches on rotation. So I was mentored, by a lot of senior Agile coaches on rotation. So every 6 months I'd have a new mentor. And the idea was that we'd have these senior Agile coaches in our organization as contractors for a period of time, and we would suck all the information out of them. And then after 2 years, they would their contract would finish and go. But what really happened here is my self-learning really accelerated. And I'm like, okay, I love being an Agile coach. I'm really appreciative. So I did the Advanced Certified Scrum Mastery, but there was a lot of overlap with what I was being mentored at the time. But the best course I did was in 2021, and I'm sure people will attest to that as well. But I did the Certified Scrum Professional Scrum Master. I absolutely loved it, and it kind of accelerated me to okay, what's next? The thing I really loved about it was that it wasn't just attend the course and here's your cert. Attend the course, here's your cert. Rowan, you gave us homework to do, right? So I really loved the fact that I had homework and I had to actually go out and do something. So I really loved it. And this course, the CSP CM, I was like, as soon as that finished and I was certified, I'm like, okay, what's next? I need to continue on this trajectory and journey. And that's what made me come to a CTC. took me 2 years to get the CTC. It was very, very difficult. By far, the hardest part of this whole journey was that last 2 years from 2021 to 2023. And I'll go through and that. So my recommendations, learning from my experience, is that the path to being an Agile coach can vary, right? So we've had product owners be Agile coaches. We've had people in the strategy teams be Agile coaches. There is no real one path to being an Agile coach. The most common one is from Scrum Master to Agile coach, but it can vary wildly how people get to be an Agile coach. My recommendation is to seek out a mentor and be mentor and have a mentor as well, be a mentor to other people. So I always have a mentor, like maybe 2 people I mentor, and I have a mentor as well. Certification will help. In my experience, certification will help and maybe the catalyst to being an Agile coach, but proven skill is equally important, like actually proving yourself in that skill. And use organizational change as an opportunity. So it worked for me twice in the last 2 job changes, but it has worked for me many times in the past too. Understand that what skills are required to be an Agile coach. So there's a great book by Lisa Atkins called Coaching Agile Teams. It has some criticism now because it's quite old. It's been around for 10, 15 years, but as a kind of a basis, and this is Lisa's thing here, like a kind of the framework that she put what Agile coaches do. I use this as a manual for me to be an Agile coach, right? So I learned about how to teach, how to mentor, with like knowledge transfer. I learned these process things about professional coaching, facilitating, and I learned as much as I could about being an Agile lean practitioner. Underpinning that, I had a lot of technical and a bit of business mastery. So I underpinned that with my own kind of knowledge about the business. And the Agile coach role is evolving. So make sure you evolve with it. The other thing I'd like to point out, we've got a question, I think, in the chat. We'll go to it in a second. But the other thing I'd like to point out as well is that the biggest jump for me from being a project manager to Scrum Master is being in this growth zone, right? So stepping outside comfort zone and going into this growth zone, but don't go too far, right? So when I first became an Agile coach, Scrum Master, I didn't like speaking in front of people, right? So if 10 people maybe, didn't like to do it, but gradually, I kind of push myself outside the comfort zone, and now I facilitate like bigger room planning with like 230 people, like, and it's like there's no stress, you know. So, but I built up to that stage. So make sure you live in this stage with not only knowledge, but also in doing stuff as well. So questions? Oh, you're a fan of the X-Wing?
That's all I said.
Oh, the X-Wing, sorry, this one. Yeah, this one. I should point out as well that Scrum Alliance released this coaching wheel. It came out halfway through my application. I've never used it, but it's kind of like the X-Wing, but on steroids. You know, there's lots more different things in it. I've tried to have a look at it. It's very complicated. The X-Wing for me is like, it's kind of gave me a basis of, you know, like, okay, this is what I need to do. Facilitating, I need to learn about facilitating. I need to practice facilitation. I need to do this. Professional coaching, we establish a professional coaching practice in our coaching chapter where we would come up with situations and professionally coach each other to practice professional coaching. That's the chain. That's my journey from Scrum Master to Agile coaching. Does anybody have any questions or want to talk about any of these things in detail?
I think one thing, Jason, like, so I love the idea of like using that organizational change as an opportunity. Have you got any sort of examples, or I'm trying to think in an organization where, because I'm more than willing to put my hand up or use that opportunity, but you've got a lot of disparate people that are at various different stages of what they understand about Agile, et cetera. They're like high value topic. Like, what do you even start to introduce and to talk about in order to try and start leveraging that opportunity?
I think for me is that my previous role was kind of gone essentially, right? So the Virgin Mobile was being gone. So it was like, I work for a large organization. Where could we go? And Scrum Mastery was a place to be. The other part of it as well is that you could potentially act as an Agile coach, even not be one. So actually like do Agile coaching, but not be an Agile coach, if that makes sense. So when it gets to the point like, oh, Gordon is actually doing Agile Coach. Let's just make him an Agile Coach, right? So there's that part of it as well. For me, the organizational change was a catalyst where my previous role had gone as a project manager, business analyst for Virgin Mobile. Virgin Mobile was being wound up. So I had the choice of being made redundant or what other opportunities are there? And Scrum Master fit. I didn't want to be a project manager for Optus, right? So Scrum Master fit. And they wanted to redeploy rather than make me redundant too. So that's what I used. And it was the same when I was a Scrum Master going to an Agile Coach. It was either, well, what are we going to do? We can, they actually did a really amazing thing. They actually wanted to build a chapter of Agile Coaches within the organization rather than keep on hiring people externally. So that really worked for me as well. So I was lucky enough. There was a cohort of about 10 Agile Coaches that came from the business, and they came from all around the business, right? So, but that was an organizational change thing. It was like, we need Agile Coaches, a chapter. Let's get all these external people in, suck the knowledge out of them, and then after 2 years, their contract will be finished, and we have a chapter of Agile Coaches. So, yeah, I don't think I've answered your question really well, but for me, organizational change has always been a catalyst of, I find it sometimes exciting, but it's always been a catalyst to move on to something better, either a new company or a better opportunity within the same company.
It's a quite interesting discussion. Can you return back to this X-Wing, if possible? Because I noticed that there's this transformation mastery, right? And also, well, dealing with quite many Agile coaches and Scrum Masters, I discovered that there is a quite poor education about this specific aspect. Catalyst of the change. You mentioned that organizational changes might bring, well, anyways, any change to something good, right?
Yes.
You need to look positively at this. But what about actually catalyzing the change? Because quite in most cases, what I was an Agile coach and Scrum Master, and I understand that mostly we are facilitating, we are mentoring, teaching, blah, blah, blah. But what about actually triggering the change?
Oh.
Do you think that it is in the courses, maybe you can suggest any courses where this is well taught, and or maybe books, I don't know.
Well, yeah. I understand what you're saying. I'm more of a team coach, but we have enterprise coaches who do that and talk. I suppose as well, maybe I'll talk, Dennis, about what's happening in my company. So in my company, that transformational change is a catalyst. It doesn't come, unfortunately, from Agile Coaches. It comes from, we have a habit of getting consultants in to tell us what to do, tell us the same thing of what the Agile Coaches are doing, and they'll listen to the kind of consultants, maybe because they pay too much for them, right? So sorry, Gordon, if that's your consultant, but that normally what happens, right? So that transformational mastery for me, that transformational catalyst, it always works top down, right? It never comes from bottom up. So having the leaders being involved in that transformational or making the change, that's where it needs to come from. It never ever works from bottom up or even mid or whatever.
Suggest don't say never ever.
Well, you could try.
And by the way, I know that this is one of the best advices in the courses and Agile mastery courses too. But what do you think? What do you think, please? Because you're a very experienced Agile coach right now. What do you think if this is the suggestion to everyone here, right? Because your point here is to help others to learn from your experience. So if they find themselves in a different situation, in different companies, obviously, right? Should they at least think about triggering this? Because obviously they cannot change this themselves. They're powerless, right? Unfortunately, maybe likely, I don't know. But should they at least try to create awareness about the problems and demand some changes, like triggering these, and then probably this, because I see this is quite making sense, right? Because you are the experts. You are the experts in the agility, not the top management. And maybe what they come up with these organizational changes, maybe this is not the best for the company. So with consciousness, you can come up with this catalyst role, right? But would you suggest people, I mean, who are interested in the role of the Agile coach, as soon as this is a part of the role, to try something and to try to see if they can do anything about that, maybe learning and also experimenting about that?
I personally don't see there's any harm in it, right? So, and maybe that's the org change that will trigger for you to be to turn into an agile coach. I like it, Dennis. What does everybody else think? Any comments?
I think we've got some things coming up that relate to that. The Optimizing Goals workshop. I've been running that with a few clients for a few years, and that's what I'm sharing next month with this meetup group.
Oh, okay.
In Sydney in person. So yeah, that's trying to get alignment around what sort of capabilities do we want? What are we trying to optimize our organizational systems for? And I think it leads nicely into what Dennis is really into these days, which is, well, then how do you operationalize that? What the organizational design choice is to actually make that happen.
Just one more question on the same, Jason.
Sorry.
Yes.
So, yeah, so we already discussed this path to Agile Coach from a Scrum Master due to this org changes. So if, because in my case, I'm right now looking for a job, but if I want to apply for a Agile Coach roles, I should have done, like, is there any way I can exhibit, or what are the kind of certifications will give an edge over others to be a certified Agile Coach? It's
going to be hard with the downturn in Agile Coaches. For my opinion, and I help with some of the hiring of Agile coaching from my company, is that there's a kind of a downturn in Agile coaching as a role. And so for me to make the jump from a Scrum Master to Agile Coach between companies, I think it's the wrong time to do it. There has been, in the past, there has been the opportunity where the market was hot, and then you could hire an Agile Coach from a Scrum Master, but again, I don't think it's possible to right now, because I know a lot of Agile coaches who are looking for work, right? So, and experienced Agile coaches as well. And it's not about, like they're asking for too much money. They can't find anywhere, right? So I think making the jump now from the market the way it is. However, you can hopefully develop the skill, right? So like, as we said, look, the Agile Coach role as a role, enterprise coach, transformation coach, Agile Coach, it's evolving. And it's changing, but the skill is still in high demand. So if you're like a Scrum Master with Agile Coach skill, potentially that could be beneficial when the market, if it changes, and it does change. Like it's hot and cold. Like sometimes it's really hot, sometimes it's at the moment it's a bit cold, but it will come back, I think.
Okay, so are we going to discuss about like what kind of certifications will help us to build that capabilities?
We are.
Okay.
Maybe not even certifications, but what you need to do to get the certification. So the certification is like the last point. There's a lot of work to get there.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Gopi. Any other questions before we move on? Okay, we're right on time, which is great. Now, this is the next part. So from Agile Coach to Certified Agile Coach. And again, I'll be explaining my journey for this. So why get certified, right? So there's lots of good reasons to connect to other coaches and trainers, gain confidence in your own ability, join the community, become part of Scrum Alliance, which is awesome. Why did I get certified though? So the reason why I got certified, so when I became an Agile Coach, because it was from a natural progression from, org change, now you're an Agile Coach, I felt it was just a kind of me changing my email signature, right? So I didn't feel as I was an Agile Coach. It was just, Jason, you're an Agile Coach, changing my signature, update my LinkedIn. I still didn't feel as if I was an Agile Coach, right? So I wanted to make sure and be kind of, I wanted to make sure that I had the knowledge and do the job that I was assigned to do. So that's why I got certified, to prove it to myself. Another good reason, this again is from the Business Agility Institute, is that 55% of companies are going to pay more based on certifications, right? So if you've got a certification, you'll get higher salaries, hopefully. So that's another really good reason I wanted to do it. So here are the certifications from Scrum Alliance. There are two coaching certifications. There's a CTC, which stands for Certified Team Coach, and CEC, Certified Enterprise Coach. Team Coach works primarily with teams, number of teams, larger project, department, or program. But an enterprise coach is more about transformation, organizational change, business agility, and you're expected to have more kind of mature coaching skills, more professional coaching skills, coaching leaders. Where me being a CTC or a team coach, I coach a number of teams, a business unit, or maybe a kind of a tribe of like 15, 20 squads. CEC would be more kind of that top-down, Dennis, that you mentioned before. The prerequisites to get one of these two certificates is the CSP, the Scrum Master, actually any CSP level. Actually, when I started this journey, I don't think there was even a CSPD or a CSD or even an ACSPO, but you have to have one of these blue ones, right? So you have to go down one of these tracks, and it's any one of these blue ones, right? So it doesn't have to be Scrum Master. There's actually one person in Australia who became a CTC from a CSP PO. So you can, and she was one of the only people ever to have done it, I think. But you can do it from any one of these tracks. There's a lot of text on this particular slide. You're not supposed to read it all, but before you even apply to become a certified team coach, these are the summary of expectations. There are tons of them. It's overwhelming, right? So, and I think it's maybe, I don't know if it's designed that way, but there is a lot of information here. Now, the CTC and CEC have different expectations of what it means to be a coach. So, with the CSP, with these particular certifications, the first few you do your 2-day course, you get your certificates. The advanced ones you do a bit more, and these ones, which I said I absolutely loved, you do for like a 2-day course or 4 half-day course, you get some homework, and then you get your certificate. With the CTC and CEC, the certificate is the kind of the thing at the end, right? So it's like you have to have proven yourself in your proven yourself as a coach to get the certificate. So you're kind of vetted that you're a coach rather than doing a course or doing something else. There are things like you have to have an active CSP we talked about, but 1,000 hours of coaching in the past 2 years, 2,000 hours if you're over 3 years if you're a CEC. The two areas which kind of are where people have gaps, and I had a gap when I applied, was this coaching mindset. So you're expected to demonstrate, but you don't have to have coaching skills at the ICF, ACC level, and that's professional coaching. With the CEC, they want you to be kind of a PCC level of ICF, professional coaching. Also, they like you to know about different types of professional coaching as well, like coactive coaching or NLI or SC. The other thing that kind of where most people have gaps is participation and leadership in the Agile community. So they want you to have participate in the Agile community. And prove over a period of time as well, over a period of like 2 years, they want you to participate in the community. So that's kind of these two areas here. They find that the coaching, professional coaching skill is the biggest gap of people, and participation in the community over 2 years. They want you to attend at least one kind of global Scrum gathering, or a coaches clinic, or a regional gathering, and volunteer and help out. I was particularly lucky that I know Rowan, because Rowan held a global gathering, wasn't it, Rowan? A regional gathering, global gathering?
Regional one in Sydney, yeah. Regional one in
Sydney, and I was a volunteer, so I absolutely loved it. So I had the best time, and I got to meet Lisa Atkins, who did the X-ray. That was awesome. So they're the two gaps. Honestly, it looks a bit daunting, but it's not. So like with me as being an Agile coach, I actually, after a period of like 2 years as a coach, I actually fulfilled most of these things already just by being a coach, because it was my day job. And the reason I chose to be a CTC is because I'm not a CEC. And some people think, CTC is like inferior or like a stepping stone to CEC. I don't see it that way as well. The type of work that kind of my preference and I'm attracted to is CTC. I like working with teams and people on the ground rather than speaking with executives or leadership or making transformational change in an organization. That's just my preference, right? So my preference, it was always to be CTC. Actually, I don't think I'll ever be CEC because I just don't like that type of coaching. I really don't like speaking to C-suite people. Okay, so there are two areas. There's all this information's online, and when I share this information, you can go through it yourself. But I also use this when I first went through this. I kind of had a look at where I answered kind of some of these questions honestly with myself and said, okay, this area here might be a gap. I'll need to improve that. So what I did was use this as a basis of me to have a look at where the gaps are. For me to actually get that certification. Next slide. This is the process to apply. This actual graphic is no longer on the website. They've removed it. It does look a bit funky, but it's actually for me, maybe because I lived and breathed it for like 2 or 3 years, it's really familiar with me. So the first part of the process is that hopefully you've met the summary of expectations. You know, like this is what they expect of you. Okay, if you're ready to apply, start the application process. The first part is a pre-application call. As a CSP, you get a kind of a free call with one of the CEC or CTC review teams, and they will go through these summaries expectations with you and kind of identify gaps of like, okay, you might need to work on your professional coaching a bit more. And you get that call. Then there's the part 1 of an application, which talks about, which will go through your qualifications and prerequisites. And then part 2 is about the quantification of your work. And then you get certified, hopefully. So one of the things, and I haven't got it in this slide deck, but one of the things they ask you to do as a CTC candidate is join a Google group. And the Google group is really interesting. Not much happens actually, just people saying, oh, I'm Jason, I want to be a CTC. But occasionally what the review team will do will have kind of like a meeting where they will go through what the requirements are and answer any questions, which was for me really, really beneficial. So the one I actually screenshotted the mural that they had, but that they say when you start the application process, all of these things should mostly be in place. You should have coaching experience, training and learning of these things. You should have multiple mentees, have multiple mentors, and your outreach should be there as well. Outreach is about things you've done, like providing written material, conferences, organizing, participating, etc. The pre-application call. This is the first part of the process. This is the way the website looks now. I really enjoyed the road thing, but that graphic has been updated in the recent kind of branding that their Scrum Alliance is doing. This is the new colors that the Scrum Alliance are using. But the pre-application call, as I mentioned, you'll as a CSP, you'll get a call with one of the review team. The person I had my pre-application call with was the person who kind of brought to the CTC. Actually, it was his baby, the CTC and CEC. So it was a guy called Vernon Steinbaker. And it was I chose him because he lived in China, and at the time zone worked for me. But it was actually quite daunting because we went through the summary expectations together. I had a couple of kind of what he called yellow flags with particularly professional coaching and my time, my involvement in the community. But then we just switched into a professional coaching call. So he says, okay, I'm going to give you a scenario and I want you to professionally coach me. So just out of the blue, I had to try to professionally coach this amazing person. And it was kind of like, I was very nerve-wracking as well. So that's what to expect in this kind of pre-application call. You'll go through the summary of expectations, and they will do professional coaching call with you. It was actually quite daunting. The scenario, Gordon, was, it was a real life scenario. It was that Vernon was saying that he just didn't think the CTC was was making enough traction in Scrum Alliance, and he wanted to improve it. Right, so it was a real life thing that he was doing. I'm like, oh goodness. I've also done another one, and it was part. I did another one. I don't know why. I'll tell you why I did another one later. But I did another one with a lady called Cherie Silas. Do you know Cherie, Ron? She, but I did a professional coaching call with her, and the scenario that I did with her was that she was writing a book, right? And she was just writing a book, and she just like coming to the end of the book, and I had to professionally coach her. But I was more prepared this time, and it was equally as daunting though, because she's a super coach, professional coach. Okay, so that's the pre-application call. Once you get that call, there's the part one of the application. The biggest learning I have about these applications, see this like C sample of application. When you click onto this, it will link you into like a Google Doc of a sample of the application. When you actually apply, it'll be a Google survey or a SurveyMonkey or something. I noticed when I applied, and this is a top tip or a hot take, is that sometimes these kind of sample applications are different to what the actual form will be, right? So that like Scrum Alliance make a lot of changes. They're quite agile and make changes all the time. But sometimes there'll be mismatches like this. It's not consistent, right? So I did a lot of work in the part one of the application based on the kind of the screenshot of like, this is what it'll be. And then when I actually paid the money to apply and actually get it, the questions were different, right? I'm like, oh, right. So, and then I had to do more homework, right? So that's a big thing. So part one of the application, it's about qualification, right? Do you meet it? Do you meet the prerequisites and requirements to be a coach? It's the same. Part one is the same for both CTC and CEC. You have to have an active CSP, and it's pretty much meets the kind of summary of expectations, right? It's very similar. And they'll ask you to kind of go into detail, like, so 1,000 hours of coaching over the last 2 years. Okay, they'll ask you a bit more detail and breakdown of that coaching as well. Part two of the application is about qualification, and it's different from CTC to CEC. So it's a qualitative evaluation as your capability as a coach. So you have to go through your experience and demonstrate proficiency. So a lot of these are kind of like, they're almost like essay type answers for a number of questions. And there's a lot of questions in here based on the summary of expectations, like, but they're like, for instance, we'll talk about continuous learning. So one of the questions may be the candidate has demonstrated continuous learning. So you will have to go in there as like, how have you demonstrated continuous learning? And they're not interested so much on what they are on the books you read, but they're interested in, okay, what did you take away from that book? You know, so for instance, training from the back of the room. If you wanted to improve your training skill, one of the recommended books is like Training from the Back of the Room, which is an amazing book, by the way. But they also want to know is, what did you take away from that? And then how did you implement what you took away from it, and how did it improve the training that you had from before? So it's not just like kind of, yeah, I read this book. It's like, what did you take away from it, and how you've changed as a coach based on that continuous learning. And you have to do that for all of it. And that's just continuous learning, right? So they're kind of like essay style questions on all of these particular things. CEC, it's different. And there's more coaching kind of capabilities that you need to demonstrate. And you need to articulate your thinking in concise written form, and that's why they ask for written application. Okay, so before you submit, these should be in place, right? So you should have coaching competencies there, where you assessing, balancing, catalyzing, education, facilitating, and you have that coaching mindset. So these should be in place when you submit the application. And then you actually press the button to certify, right? So that's the process. There are actual tips here on applications. And one of the tips that they recommend is that you engage with a mentor or somebody to help you with the application. And I read this when I was applying or deciding to apply, and I did a lot of work in the application. I'm like, maybe I'll do that. So there's one person in Australia, I think, who does this. His name is Andrew Wong, and I engaged him as my mentor, my CTC mentor, to help me not only with the application, but more importantly, to help me with the gaps that I saw, but also that he saw too, right? So, and we spent every Saturday morning for like 10 weeks. going through like improving my professional coaching. And he also helped me a lot with my application. If I wrote an answer for something, he's like, no, I don't think that's really good enough. Maybe we can improve that here. Or he didn't direct me, but he actually gave me really good advice on that's not really good answer, you know, but that's really good, you know. So he gave me that advice and confidence to push through. There is a new part of the application, and this is different than when I applied. I think now you have to get somebody to kind of refer you as well, like as a mentor. Like, so if you're being mentored by somebody, they want to see their kind of their commentary on you as well. I think you got to get kind of like, I think it's here. It's changed as well. So the new changes, they kind of want you kind of get referrals of people. So people that have been under your coaching, and also people that have been mentored by you, and also people who are mentored you, for them to write something on your behalf as well. I think that's a new part of the process that wasn't there. As I said, it changes all the time, but that's a new part of the process. So I went through this process. I spent a lot of time in part one. Andrew helped me a lot, submitted the application. It was accepted that I was, my part one of the application was accepted. And then in part two of the application, Andrew said, I think you're ready. So there's actually a different way to get a CTC or CTC as well, CTC or CEC as well, and it's called the nomination path. And if you're a CTC or a CTC and you know one, they can nominate you to be it. He says, I think you're ready, so let's go through this different process. I'm like, okay. So, and the questions are a bit different. So we went through this particular application process. So most people go through the process of the two-step process, but we in my opinion, we changed tack. And because I hired Andrew as my mentor, he actually helped me through this process, and he nominated me because he believed that I was ready. And we put a lot of we kind of probably took longer doing this in fairness, and we probably should have stayed with the original one, but because the questions are slightly different and there's like less word count. So I had to put everything I had prepared for part two of my normal application, I had to reduce down and try to put it into this other form. And the thing about it is that's where step three there is I had a call between Cherie. That's where I had the call with Cherie. And then we went on through it. And when I got to step five, my initial review by the review team, I was deferred because they didn't think I was ready, right? So I was deferred for 6 months and what they do is they when they defer your application, if they defer your application, they give you a chance to kind of bridge the gap. So I was deferred for 6 months, and in that 6 months, I had a baby, well, my wife did, and I managed to, at the end of 6 months, we reapplied and I was successful. So that's the nomination path. And this is not well known, this nomination path, but you need to know a CTC or a CEC that kind of will nominate you. And they will need to like actually believe that you are ready to do it. So you can't just nominate people out of the blue. It's probably better off. I think actually it took longer that I was nominated than going through the formal process, in fairness. Tips and tricks. Before we get to questions, the tips and tricks I have, there's actually quite a lot of information available on the Scrum Alliance website. One of them is a link for resources for CTC candidates. There's a list of like, based on the X-Wing, like facilitation, training, everything else. There's a list of reading, like books that you can read. And I found this absolutely invaluable. And I went through went through them one by one. You know, I have a 20-30 minute walk to work, so I just put them on Audible. I'd listen to them on to work, so I got through quite a lot of stuff that way. In my job, we have a Skillsoft Percipio kind of account, and I found out that 90% of the recommended books were available online, like through Skillsoft, right? So I didn't actually have to even buy any of these books, right? Some of them were in PDF format. Some of them were actually not PDF, in kind of a web page. Some of them were audio, but some of the audio was kind of like just a computer reading the book rather than somebody performing it. But I actually saved myself thousands of dollars in books by having this account. And I think you can get a Skillsoft or Percipio account, just a personal account, but there's tons and tons and tons of books there. It's amazing. I don't know, has anybody else used Percipio or Skillsoft for reading? No, I don't know. One book was like, I think $180, and I got it, like, I just read it online. It's awesome. So my other advice or tips and trick is get involved in the Scrum Alliance community, speak, organize, participate, go to a regional gathering, volunteer if you can, go to a coach's clinic, practice professional coaching. We practiced it in our chapter at work, and it helped a lot. But the recommendation that grow is fine, which is just like goal, reality, options, and way forward, I think. And be patient, listen to podcasts. I've got a link here to Agile podcasts that I listen to all the time. Some of them aren't Agile podcasts, but some of them are related to work, like, and the application process can change or be tweaked during the application, so periodically check it. Be patient, for me, is the biggest bit of advice that I have for you. And the other bit of advice that I have as well, if you're going through this process, is enjoy it, right? So I think I was in a bit of a hurry to do it, right? But when it finished and I got that certification, I didn't know what to do next. I was like, okay, I've got it. I'm like, I was kind of like had post certification blues. I'm like, oh, what's next? And it's like, and I kind of missed that kind of direction and learning that I had, that it gave me, right? So I really, really missed it. The journey is the journey is really what being a certified coach is about. It's not about the certificate. I haven't done anything with the certificate, to be honest with you. It's really about that journey. And for me, it gave me focus and direction that really, really improved my learning, but also really, really improved my career. So that's what really being a certified team coach is about. It's about the learning and the focus and direction. That's pretty much it. I think we're on time, 8:50. Are there any questions on being certified?
I just have a very brief question. You mentioned the annual fee is $500. Is that Australian or US?
US.
Yeah,
that's the license fee. That's the kind of base license fee for like a coach. But the actual application as well, it's like $200 US as well. So it's a costly endeavor, really.
Yeah.
But if you're lucky like me, I'll get my work to pay for it.
That's a good deal. Yeah, because I think it's like $250 for every 2 years when you renew your CSP.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you.
No worries. Any other questions?
Yeah, Jason, what level of journaling is required to document your experience to get that sort of 1,000 hours? Was that quite detailed?
No, it's not. It doesn't have to be. So if it's good to do it, but they say if you don't have it, you can estimate it. Like you can put in like, okay, I'll do like 2 days a week for 48 weeks a year, blah blah blah. You know, like I work 7.6 hours a day, and that's what you can do as well. So it's actually right underneath the question, they give you that formula, that like a formula that you can use. It doesn't have to be exact when you apply.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries. Any other questions? It was honestly, it's probably like the hardest thing I've done, the hardest bit of learning I've done, just because it took so long. And it was like a roller coaster ride too, right? So when I got deferred that time, I was kind of a bit depressed, you know, but yeah, I'm really happy that I did it. There used to be, and maybe I'll mention it here, there used to be a benefit of having a CTC and a CEC, in that you could certify via coaching CSMs and CSPOs. That benefit is no longer there, right? So the 1st of January 2024, that was cancelled. They always said like that this could be taken away. It's not like at any point in time, and they did take it away. And quite honestly, because I was a CTC before then, it was really, really inefficient to certify via coaching. You know, like you ended up like it took weeks and weeks and months and months and months to certify someone. And I don't think it was a really, really good way of certifying people. So although I had the ability to do it, I'm not interested in it because it just was really, really efficient. And the people you end up coaching, they want to talk about, you know, things that making them get it. It was very hard to kind of steer their conversation towards kind of like the syllabus of what you needed to cover, right? So it was always like what they always talked about, the what, and you know, so that particular benefit is no longer there. Just to tell you as well that there's not too many of these coaches in Australia. I looked it up. People who make their profiles public, at least on the Scrum Alliance website, because you can hide it. But I think I was the 10th or 12th CTC in Australia. So there's not too many. And I'm not surprised because it's so hard to get. But CEC, there's only 3 at the moment. There are a few people who have got it and then let it expire. And I think there was a 1.12 in Australia of CTCs, but there aren't many of this certification at all in Australia.
Thanks, Jason. Can you hear me okay? My headset
Yes.
sometimes plays up. Yep. Rowan will attest to that. With your CTC, I guess I have 2 questions. Was there a particular part of it that you thought, this thing that I've learned during you know, going through this exercise is something that really opened my eyes up or changed my thinking, or something I really leveraged? And the second question is, what was the hardest part of doing the CTC? Was there a part of it you went, this was hard and it really stretched me?
Thank you for your question, Ryan. The first part, the first question, professional coaching as a thing, right? So, you know, and actually flexing and improving that particular muscle of professional coaching. When people kind of, when you can professionally coach somebody and they come up with like solutions to their own problems, they own it more, right? You don't need to get involved. So for me, I use that a lot more, and going through this process and establishing that kind of professional coaching kind of practice that we had in our chapter really made a big difference to me as well. So professional coaching is one thing that I really learned, and it was a gap initially, right? So and then I learned it, right? So that was a big thing. The second part, the hardest part was I'm pretty resilient normally, but just keeping with it, because I think a lot of people would have given up, right? So it took a lot of kind of persistence in my part, and just that never give up attitude to go through the process, especially when we decided to change tack. You know, when going through this, it actually took longer, and then my coach said, let's go through the nomination path. So we stopped what I was doing and then going through this, and it ended up taking longer, and then I got deferred. You know, I'm like, oh, what am I doing? I was kind of a bit kind of depressed, and you know, I nearly gave up, but I'm like, no, I'm not going to do it. And I had a baby at the same time as well. So it was like very kind of difficult time. But it was also the most rewarding part as well, to be honest with you, Ryan. You know, the fact that it was hard to get, you know, sometimes the bigger the hurdle, the kind of bigger the reward, you know. So I really appreciated when I got it in the end. And as I said, it was a bit kind of, I had post-certification blues afterwards, because I kind of lost the focus and kind of still don't know where I'm going to go, right? So I kind of lost that kind of driving force, but everything was laid out. So I had lots of stuff to kind of learn and do and everything else. I always had something to keep my focus. It was awesome. Hopefully that answers your question. Any other questions before we wrap up? I'll share this pack. There's links to all these things, and you can read them yourselves. Even just the link to resources for CTC candidates. As a coach or as a Scrum Master, looking at these books, you're like, oh, wow, this is awesome. Or even like going into Principio and then kind of like seeing what books are available there. If all you get out of today is that, hopefully it's worthwhile.
Cool. Actually, I've got a question I just thought of too. Jason, I guess to what degree in the Agile coaching stances do they kind of assess your ability to provide advice, or, you know, essentially provide some sort of consulting style kind of guidance when people are really not yet competent, not yet confident to, give something a try without having a bit more maturity to their understanding. Is that part of it at all, or a pretty light touch?
For the different stances. So say the first part of the question again. Sorry, Roland.
Just the providing advice, whether you call it consulting or maybe mentoring, but yeah, giving some advice. Is that kind of coming across a bit in the CTC? Less than the professional coaching.
It is. There's a whole consulting side of things. There's like mentoring, consulting, and what's interesting as well, that they like you to kind of, in my experience, anyways, to show your mistakes. What did you learn from something, right? So a lot of the times you kind of like, instead of having like an amazing kind of application, like everything's amazing, they really want to see you kind of like, when did you fail? And some of the stories that, some of the kind of responses that I had were things that I tried to do and it was disastrous, but what did I take away from that? And then how did I reapproach that? And then what was the result? And what was the impact of that for that person? There is kind of suggested reading for mentoring and also consulting as well. And they ask you like explain a time for me when you've mentored somebody. What was the blah, blah, blah. The example I gave when I mentored somebody, I was mentoring somebody to become, I think, an Agile coach. And I successfully mentored out of being an Agile coach, not intentionally, but it was like she decided she didn't want to do it, right? So in the end, because we talked about it a lot, wasn't so, yeah. But the consulting part of it as well, there's books in there of consulting, and they ask you when have you consulted as well. I think it's part of one of the questions. So they want to see. Got a question here. How much time did you take? Did you take right from the start to the end? It took 2 years from start to finish to get certified. So I pretty much, I think I started, actually wasn't 2 years, it was 3 years, probably 3 years. I started, I think, the process in 2020 with a view of getting the CSP SM, but I started the process here. Actually, even before then, I had a look at what this was, and make sure that I was like mentoring and being mentored, and and understanding what I probably needed to achieve here just to be a better coach, right? So it took I think 3 years from start to finish. But if you're already an Agile coach, if you're already an Agile coach and you're doing all these things, the process will be a lot better, right? So if you're an Agile coach with 5 years experience, and you do all of these, like the summary expectations, you can tick the boxes like, yeah, I do all this, everything, and it's just a matter of going through the process, and it doesn't take too long. You'll see there in the nomination path as well that the average turnaround is 16 to 24 days, right? So it's actually quite quick if you meet all the criteria and you can answer all the questions really, really well. So in my experience, we took a bit longer. I think it was 60 days, honestly, but that was more of a case of that the review team were, and the review team, by the way, they're all amazing people, but they volunteer as well. They don't get paid for doing this, and there's not many of them. And sometimes they're a bit under the pump, that there's so many applications going on, right? So it can be difficult. They're really good. Any other questions before we wrap up?
Yeah, I'm glad we got to talk about the coaching wheel and the stances a little bit there. I think the point that Dennis, has made there, I guess, is reminding me of what Lisa Atkins has said quite directly, which is if people lack knowledge, then coaching just isn't the right thing at that point in time.
No, that's right. Yeah, you have to be able to switch stance. So into one of these ones maybe. And there's actually one of the kind of, I think, suggested readings, like the different stances of a coach, of an Agile coach, that's what being an Agile coach is, being able to know when you need to switch coaching, switch stances.
Yeah.
I would have one question about this. What do you think? I don't know if you had this experience. Obviously, Agile means something, right? And as Agile coach, it's not the same as just a professional coach, right?
Yes.
So you are trying to help people become agile instead of doing it.
Yes.
So the question is, imagine that you have people who are like you. They like the way you're coaching them, but they still act the same. Did you have this experience that you ensure that they understand the topic, that the short feedback loops make sense for them, etc., etc., but they still proceed doing the same as before?
Yes, yeah. So there's kind of, everybody has their, like, although there's like kind of like different coaching stances and professional, everybody kind of has their own coaching style as well, right? So my coaching style is like, I don't inflict. I kind of like to be invited to be coached, right? So I never kind of inflict my style. So, and what my particular approach in that situation, because that does happen, is I'll show them the benefit that they could be doing. How is it easier for you? How are you going to achieve your the things that you're going to do easier, like, or a better way of doing stuff? So, and I'll leave it up to them. So I'm not going to. I don't have. If they decide not to do something, they decide not to do something, right? So, but I can show them the way. If they're interested in doing it, I'll be more around, right?
I really appreciate that you mentioned this, because I admire people who do not inflict, as you mentioned. That is the approach to stay in this profession at all, because otherwise everyone hates you, right?
Yeah.
But the question of mine is this: so you see that there is a potential for this team, for example, or many teams working together. Usually they work together because one product, really, one team, it's just impossible, right? So many people together, like hundreds of people, produce something. And you see that they are losing in terms of this agility, in terms of, again, maybe short feedback loops and maybe maximizing the value, et cetera, et cetera. And you feel like, well, they could do this, but they, for some reason, they don't want this. Did you catch yourself on this thinking that maybe I'm missing something? What happens?
And usually, in my experience, usually what happens is when there's a stressful kind of situation, or there's like teams or people under the pump, they kind of fall back to what they know or what has worked for them in the past. Not only like people, but CEOs and everything else. So they'll go back to, okay, I've always done this. I've always thrown people under the bus at this situation, so I'm going to throw people under the bus now, right? So they'll always fall back to that. That's the hardest part of, you know, kind of changing behavior is kind of what I would do in that situation is I would kind of professionally coach them as well, you know, like and show them what the impact of them acting in that way was, and ask them if there's a better way of doing it, right? But it can happen where people will fall back, and sometimes you see like it's hard to change our culture in an organization as well, and sometimes a culture can exist from, even if you have like teams, non-persistent teams, the culture in the team can flow on, right, from ages ago. And a culture in organizations, it's hard to make changes in culture. Yes, so I have seen it, and it's difficult to make changes. Usually the approach can be from top down with stuff like that, especially big culture changes, transformational changes.
And what's the means of changing the culture? What do you think? How, I don't know, top management can change the culture, for example?
They do. I found transformation usually works better top down, in my opinion, like organizational change. I'll give you an example, right? So we were trying to implement Agile in very kind of the culture we had before was very bureaucratic. We had people working in silos because we're such a big company, and it was very difficult for Agile. If we just put coaches in there and say this is the way new ways of working, it would have never happened, right? But what did happen was the CEO of Optus came to our kind of sprint reviews and showcases, and he was asking questions. And all of a sudden, because he did that, he kind of changed the whole culture, and Agile stuck because of that just one little thing. He would always come up. He said, well, what do you need? He would ask him, what do you ask? How can I do this? You know, how can I help? It was such a big moment when actually not only moment, he used to do it all the time. He used to turn up every 2 weeks, you know, so it was amazing that he would turn up at the end of the sprint and ask questions and be there supporting. So I think you need to get buy-in from top down to make that kind of cultural change in an organization.
Jason, how did you get, just to jump into this discussion, how did you actually get the CEO to turn up?
We invited him. We invited him and he turned up, right? So we told him it was important. We're like, you've spent all this money to make you spent all this money. No, it wasn't about the money. He says, you want us to be agile, you need to be able to champion and support it. So we invited him and he turned up. And then when we didn't invite him, he still turned up. He was so interested in it as well. And we had teams, you know what's funny, Ryan, we had teams talking about API changes and, you know, like demoing their API change where they put in a response, a thing, and then it'll come back with a question. And he'd be like taking notes and be interested. It was amazing. It was really, really amazing. Yeah, it was good. That was Alan Liu, by the way. Yeah.
All right. I think it's about time to thank Jason.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jason.
No worries. I will send around this pack to everyone. Oh, sorry, in the chat, I think, or I'll post it somewhere so people can see it. There are lots of links, and you know, and please reach out to me either on LinkedIn or wherever if you have any questions or follow-up questions. I'll happily go into more detail or answer your question.
Yeah, that's an awesome offer. I think we can really benefit from helping each other out through this sort of stuff because, like I say, Jason, it's not much information out there, and you know, there might be the one mentor, Andrew Wong, I guess we know about, but yeah, it's like a whole adventure, isn't it? Unless you've got someone that can kind of give you some advice, it's going to be a bit trickier.
It was really hard. It's not easy.
I hear you. Yeah, it took me a while to get certified Scrum Trainer too, which is quite a lot more expensive per year to keep.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Also, the Certified Agile Leadership Educator, I've managed to put an application in for that. It took me a while, but yeah, very happy with that. Anywho, I just want to mention next month I'm doing a workshop. It's been a while since I've had the chance to do this with this group. Can you see that shared screen? It's just the next meetup. It is in Sydney, so those of you that are not local to Sydney, we might not be able to do that together. But yeah, this one's really about like what is better? What is this agile thing in terms of capabilities or like optimizing it from a systems thinking perspective? And I've run like workshops with leaders on that quite a few times, and just like to share a bit of that because I think that leads into a lot of good stuff, including the stuff that Dennis, you know, is really into, including a lot of the big picture sort of things that can help you level up and make sure that what you're doing just isn't locally optimizing and kind of doing whatever kind of feels easiest. It's more like what's this business strategy require and what sort of capabilities do we need for the future? Cool. So has anyone got any last thoughts?
There'll be free pizza at Rowan's talk.
Oh, sorry. Might be time for my internet to drop out. As I said, does anyone have any last thoughts, last words?
I just said, Ron, there'll be free pizza on your talk.
Oh yeah, free pizza, free beer. Yeah. Come along if you're in Sydney. Cool. Thanks for coming, everyone. Great to see you.
Thank you, everyone.